Guess who's back? Back again.
This is the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK.
I'm back.
Now, broadcasting live from WOYK's downtown York studios inside Wellspan Park, here's Gary Sutton.
We're at 7:05 on a Thursday morning. I'm Gary Sutton. This is the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK. Proud to be coming your way this morning where it is 4 degrees outside at the moment. Let me check that, by the way. I think it's 7 degrees. It's going up 3. 7 degrees from when I first crawled to the car this morning, so we're very glad about that. A veritable heat wave today compared to the -1 we started with yesterday. Mark McKenzie is here.
Still, but we are not going to get above freezing until Sunday.
Great.
So let me be the little ray of sunshine.
Yes, thank you for adding to that, Mr. Happiness. So anyway, you can get to us today at 833-478-4729. Question of the day, very simple one. You heard the president on his inaugural on Monday talk about we're going to be one nation under God again. What does that mean to you? We're going to be talking about that with Dr. Tom or Pastor Tom Almanzo later on. But one of the things that we like to do on our show is to let you know about places that you don't know about here in the York area and want to raise up the community. And we've got a 160th anniversary coming up in February for the Children's Home of York. You say, well, what's the Children's Home of York? Some of you may not even know about it. When did it get started? Well, 160 years ago in February. And with us this morning, our historian friend, Jim McClure, who has written the book Never to Be Forgotten, the 250th on 1999. And then 25 years later, he added on to it for the 275th anniversary we just celebrated this past year. And he joins us this morning here on WOYK and the Gary Sutton Show. Jim, always good to have you on, my friend. How are you today? And I think we have Jim coming up right here. Are you there, Jim? Okay, we're going to try one more time here.
Jim, are you there?
Okay, so we need to hook him up again here, and we'll try one more time. A little glitches of starting a brand new program, but
I can hear.
There we have him now. Hello, Jim. How are you this morning?
Hey, Gary. Glad to be here. Sorry about that glitch.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
Glitches happen, but it is one of the things. But, the Children's Home of York, you always bring up such interesting things. We have a celebration coming up. We seem to have a lot of celebrations here recently in York. Last year, the 275th anniversary. Now we got the Children's Home of York. Was founded 160 years ago. And I never knew much about it until I started reading about it. And you've got some stories on it this morning. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it was founded, the Children's Home of York was founded as an orphanage right at the end of the Civil War. And the Civil War had disrupted York County families so greatly. The deaths and wounded in the county of county soldiers. For example, about 8% of the population of York served in the Civil War, and that would be equivalent to 36,000 people today. So 600 were at least about 600 were died. About the similar number were wounded that we know about, and so families were greatly disrupted. And the folks in town, the leaders in town, said we really need to find a place for all these displaced children, and so they established the Children's Home of York It was at Pine in Philadelphia Street, and it stood from 1867 to 1973. And so it was an institution here in town, in fact, still is. They're still in operation. They offer different types of services. They offer foster care and adoption now, and independent group homes, but not the large institutional type of setting that it originally was.
So Pine in Philadelphia, you'd have been down near like the Sylvia Newcomb Center there. Am I correct? Somewhere in that neighborhood?
It's right across the street from there.
Yeah.
There's a Shopette there today,
right,
and then a high-rise apartments in its footprint today. And the people, the kids, the children that were there weren't necessarily just the children of Civil War soldiers. They were other displaced children, orphans, and they didn't always lose both parents. There's a case that in about 1930 where a girl by the name of Era Marguerite Starner Her mother was sick and worked some, but couldn't support the family. The father was largely absent. So she's a good case to study because she was there from the time she was 2 until the time she was 18. In one way, it might seem like a charmed life. They could ride ponies, and there was a swimming pool there, and they could do plays in an auditorium there. But they were still confined there in an institution. And there was a woman that came in about 1930 by the name of Mary Sittler Cooper, who really changed it from a workhouse type of atmosphere like you might read in a Dickens novel to one that was more of a home. And it remained there. Marguerite Starner lived there until she was 18, and then she went into a foster relationship with a local vet in town, his family, by the name of Dr. Becker. And she stayed there 4 years and got married, and ended up she just died in 2020. Had a great life, and her obituary said that it could have been different, but that she made the most of very humble beginnings and lived and thrived later in life. So she credits the Children's Home with really, turning her life around, giving her, a goal and purpose and so on.
It was
So
interesting.
there's countless stories like that, Gary.
Yeah, it was interesting. You read about this home. It's not just a normal home. There was a large inside room I saw where you could roller skate. There was an auditorium inside there where kids could put on various plays and things like that. So it was not your normal home. And I guess at dinner time, they'd say the children would actually get together in a big room and sit at tables of different sizes with tablecloths and cloth napkins. But they say conversation was not encouraged at that time. What was that old thing about children should be seen and not heard? I guess they kind of did that at that time, but you did have to finish your plate, right?
Yes, you did. Or else you would sit there until the next meal.
Wow.
Which I guess might mean overnight if it was a night dinner. So I suspect they probably ended up eating. One of the things that it sounds charmed again, but Marguerite Starner, she later married an Arnold, and one of the things that she would write about is that whenever people came to kind of they wanted to adopt someone at the home, then they would kind of size up the kids, and they would inevitably adopt younger kids. So imagine anytime there's a visitor to your home like that, you think maybe this is my time, and then the disappointment, the isolation that would have occurred after that. It would have been it was on one hand a home unlike any that they would have. On the other hand, it would just be a very difficult existence not to have parents, not to have a home like many of us were fortunate to grow up with.
Now, the home is no longer located there. Obviously, there are other things in its place. But I believe it's out. Am I correct? It's out on Horseshoe or Shoe House Road. Am I correct on that?
Yes, and what happened in the 1960s, there was a movement away from institutionalization in these big boxes and into smaller group homes. And so the campus they moved some services out into Shoe House Road, right near the Shoe House. And they moved there in 1979, and they're still there today.
Wow.
And they offer the services they were an orphanage, and now that they are specialized in foster care and adoption. And they do have independent group homes, smaller homes. They offer psychiatric treatment and for children, all for children. They really deal with the most vulnerable in our community.
Right.
And so it's really it's interesting whenever you post anything on social media about the Children's Home, people just get on there and they talk about many people have touched that home, has touched many people, whether they stay there, whether they volunteer there, whether they work there. It's something that brings out stories from our community, such as what I talked about with Marguerite Starner Arnold.
You talked
Very
about
interesting.
You talk about the end of the Civil War, which is where it started, 1865. But Samuel Small and his wife Isabel get involved in this. You mentioned about a lot of the kids were displaced because of the death of a father who fought in the Civil War or whatever. But Samuel Small and his wife get involved in this, don't they?
Yes, Samuel Small and Isabel Small were really the source of a lot of goodness in York County in the 1800s. They didn't have children, so they kind of invested in the community, and not only the children's home, but York Hospital. They helped start York Hospital, York Collegiate Institute, which is a forerunner of York College. They were there at that, and then the York Benevolent Society, which cared for families during the Civil War. They founded all four of those institutions. All four of those institutions are with us today.
When you look at the place that the original children's home stood, there's actually a plaque that sits there today. If people walk by there down on Philadelphia Street and right there at Pine, you'll see a little plaque sitting there, won't you?
Yes, the original wall is still there. The wall that kind of defined the north end of the campus is still there. And so you can read a little history on the plaque. It's one of those unknown treasures. It's interesting that in that part of town, which I guess it was northeast York today, but it was kind of in the middle of nowhere in those days. It's kind of on the edge of town. The York County Prison was there at Chestnut Street. It's still there. It's just abandoned. And then the York County Poorhouse was where Alexander D. Good School is today.
Wow.
And the Alms House. And so that was kind of the campus, and some elements of that moved out to East York. Well, all three of those moved out to East York after, and the Alms House moved out there in about 1930. And it's known as, it was known for many years as York County Hospital and Home. And today it's a rehabilitation center and a place for people, elderly to stay. And of course, the Chestnut Street Prison is moved to Concord Road, which is York County Prison today. And the Children's Home of York moved out to Shoehouse Road. So it's kind of one campus got up and moved, 5 miles to the east and established another campus.
Well, people that want to, check out the whole deal and hear some stories about the home, there's a chance for them to do that on February 20th. Tell us about what the York County History Center is going to be doing on that.
Yes, there's going to be a reception for the public and those that stayed there in the past at the Children's Home and volunteers. And it's going to be a birthday party, really, from 4 to 6 p.m. on February 20th. At the New York County History Center.
And that's 121 North Pershing Avenue in York. If you haven't been there, you want to get down there, they're going to host the event that day. And, of course, Jim, you always tell people about the book, Never to Be Forgotten. People have a chance to read that book and check you out. Where can they find you, and where can they get copies of the book?
Yes, you can get that at Brown's in the York County History Center at 121 North Pershing Street, and then via Amazon. And the stories that we talked about, involving Samuel and Isabel Small's contributions to the community are in that book.
It's going to be a lot of fun to check that out. I love to hear about where we were as York. A lot of the buildings today that are being used for other purposes, where they've moved to. It's always fun to see how York has kind of just developed over the years, so to speak. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Jim. Final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Jim McClure this morning. Check out his book, Never to Be Forgotten. You can find it at Brown's Orchard. You can also find it at 121 North Pershing Avenue. That's the new York County History Center. And, again, on February the 20th from 4 to 6, you can check out some stories about the Children's Home. A lot of stories will be talked about that day by former residents and community members as we continue to tell you about your community and how it's developed over the years. We take a break. We come back with more news, some news under the radar, some it's right out there in the open for you at 7:18. This is the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK.